All right, I think we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's live stream with Akash and Chia. I am stoked that you guys are here. My name is Adam Wozni. I head up community at Akash, and I'll also be your host for today's conversation. So today we're going to be following up on our recent partnership announcement on how to create an NFT or how to create NFT plots on Akash with Chia Network. Our guests for today's conversation are Andrew Mello, head of mining at Akash, and
Hello.
John Michael. Hey, Andrew. And John Michael Hands, VP of Storage Business Development at Chia. So today's agenda is pretty straightforward. I'll kick off our conversation with a few questions. We'll give a brief demo, and then we'll answer some of your questions that you guys are having in the chat. So feel free to make as many questions or have as many questions you have in the chat, and we'll get to as many of them as we can at the end of our conversation. One other quick note is after this event is over, be sure to follow both Chia and Akash on Twitter to keep this conversation going. I know John Michael and Andrew might be following some stuff on Twitter, so feel free to jump in there and have some questions there. But before we get into today's conversation, I want to introduce our guests. So first up is Andrew Mello, head of mining at Akash. So Andrew, I was hoping you could give some folks listening in a little bit about you, a little bit about your background and how you ended up here at Akash.
Yes, absolutely. Hi, everyone. So I'm one of the newest hires at Akash in the last few months, and I'm really excited to have joined the team to lead basically all of the efforts for reaching out to mining communities so that we can educate them about what the opportunities are on the decentralized web. And, you know, since Akash is a marketplace of compute, it's a very, very lucrative, interesting marketplace for miners to look at for increasing, you know, their capacity and ability to mine.
Very cool. So also a quick fun tidbit on you. Folks at home might not know this, but you kind of reside in both the US and France. Is that right? Do you speak French?
Yes, I do speak French fluently. Je parle en français pour tous les Françaises. Alors, I went to school in Paris, and that's really where I fell in love with the city, and still keep a place there as well.
Awesome. Well, next time I'm in France, I'm staying at your place for free. Is that all right?
Of course.
Cool. Next up, we have John Michael Hands, or JM. Feel free to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your background, how you ended up in the crypto space, and how you ended up at Chia.
Yeah, sure. So John Michael Hands, I'm VP of Storage at Chia. I joined Chia last May, but I've been involved with the project since around the alpha, which was about 6 months before that. I spent the 10 years before joining Chia at Intel. I was a product manager for the data center nvme SSDs at Intel. So yeah, I was at Intel for a decade and left to go dive into the crypto space head first. But so I lead our storage business development. I work with all our storage vendors, a lot of effort on sustainability, and then all things plotting and farming, which is what we're going to talk about today.
Yes.
Very cool. And another fun fact on JM. So you recently attended, I believe, CES in Vegas. Is that right? How did that go? I've never been. I've always wanted to go. I'm a big gadget freak. So was there any gadget alpha? Any things that you thought were really cool at CES in Vegas?
Yeah, lots of wearables. The shiny TVs are always like the number one. I walked around the Samsung floor quite a bit, looking at the pretty 8K TVs. They have NFTs on the TVs now, so you can display your NFTs on a Samsung TV. But of course, I was most interested in the PCIe Gen 5 SSDs that Samsung had and some other cool announcements on storage side.
Right on. Yeah, I know. I've been debating getting one of those NFT frames. I feel like that might be worth it, right? I have a handful of NFTs, like probably everyone listening in right now. So maybe it's worth getting one. So if you have any recommendations, maybe go to Twitter and we can throw it in the Twitter, or feel free to throw it in the chat here. Cool. So thanks for that. Thanks for the backgrounds. Before we get into the details on the partnership with Chia and all that entails, I was hoping that maybe, John Michael, we could kick it off with you. Could you just kind of give folks listening in a little bit of information on Chia, like how long it's been around, what Chia does, just kind of give some folks a little bit of insight into what's going on over at Chia.
Yeah, we hope a lot of people from the Akash side are joining in and just learning about Chia. But Chia is an energy efficient blockchain. It uses a new Nakamoto consensus that we call proof of space and time. So Chia has been around since 2017. It was founded by Bram Cohen. Bram is most famous for inventing BitTorrent, which I'm sure most people have heard of. And so they've been working on Chia since 2017. The mainnet went live March of last year, and it grew. It was just massive success. It grew from 120 petabytes at launch in March to over like 30 exabytes of storage by June. So it caused a little bit of disruption and craziness in the hard drive market at the beginning of the year, just during the launch. But so things have kind of settled down, and there's been a ton of awesome product announcements that we've had over the last couple of weeks that you guys can go check out at chia.net. But I think today we want to talk really about our farming community, which in Chia, you basically use your underutilized storage space to secure the network. So basically you have these plot files that live on a hard drive, and you do this thing called farming, which is the network periodically just kind of checks the plot for these cryptographic proofs, and they're kind of like bingo cards. And so once you basically have these plot files created, farming is very, very energy efficient. You just basically, the power of farming is basically the power of just a hard drive sitting there idle. So it's really energy efficient compared to proof of work, which is kind of the main thing that Chia is trying to fix for proof of work. And it's really interesting. We are, brand new layer one, and it's completely different consensus than proof of work or proof of stake, which is very mind blowing to a lot of people because it didn't exist until Chia launched. And so in this farming, you have to create the plots first, and this thing we call plotting in Chia is basically initializing these proofs of space. But you're basically writing out a bunch of random hashes, and then you do this algorithmic compression, and then you sort those cryptographic hashes on disk and then compress them into this final plot file. So that's kind of the hard part of Chia, is as far as the barrier of entry to farming. But most people, you just have like a standard type of desktop, and you want to kind of maybe a data center type SSD to do some of this plotting. But we're talking about today, I think there's a really awesome opportunity here with Akash, because there's a lot of farmers. We have about 300,000 people that are farming Chia right now that did all their plotting, they filled up all their hard drives, and now their systems are kind of just sitting idle, and then they can decide whether to sell those, whether to use those for some other kind of proof of work coin. But I think that they're going to have an awesome opportunity to actually look at this Akash as plotting as a service, to actually give up their systems to help other people fill up their hard drives.
Very cool. And for folks listening in that may not know how large this is, could you kind of explain what 30 or 80 exabytes you said?
Yeah, now at the peak, it reached about 40 exabytes. Yeah, boy, it's almost hard to describe 40 exabytes. So like, I think when Dropbox first filed to go public, all of Dropbox was like 1 exabyte, so I think they're much bigger today. But just to give you an example, an exabyte is 1,000 petabytes. 1 petabyte is 1,000 terabytes. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's not a subtle amount of storage. You need many data centers over. But so the idea is the security of Chia comes from this massive amount of storage that we have on the net space. You can think of in Chia your farming capacity, like how much hard drive space you're allocating to the network. It's kind of equivalent to hashing power in, like, if you were trying to compare versus proof of work. And then the total amount of hashing power on the network, we call that the net space, which is just the total amount of storage on the network. And it's very similar to proof of work in that regards, where your rewards are proportional to what you're putting into the network versus how much is out there. But yeah, the Chia rabbit hole goes much deeper than that. I'm sure we can answer some questions here at the end after we talk through some of this cool stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that. Wow, I was just thinking Dropbox only 1. That's too bad. No, I'm just kidding. They're doing fine. Cool. Thanks for that explanation and explaining all that stuff for everybody listening in. Next up, Andrew, I was hoping we could do the same thing about Akash. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about Akash and kind of some of the fun stuff we have going on over here?
Absolutely. So, from the 60,000 foot view, Akash is really the leader in the decentralized web movement right now and Web 3.0 movement. We are one of, if not the largest providers of compute in that decentralized web space. And that entire infrastructure and ecosystem is really running on a Kubernetes layer. And that gives us really some incredible flexibility for the types of workloads that the network can support. And when I joined, Akash a few months ago, I myself am not only a Chia plotter, I'm also a Chia farmer. I have half a petabyte of storage myself that I maintain on the network, and have been watching, the team and the blockchain grow since before the launch of mainnet. And so when I joined Akash and learned about really the features and functionalities of this, decentralized marketplace for cloud compute, I saw an immediate, potential fit with Chia and the workload for plotting. As John Michael was, explaining, the workload for plotting is very complex, and most people do not have a machine that can create a plot in a reasonable amount of time that makes any sense for them to become eventually a farmer once they have enough plots. So, the typical use case, as John Michael was saying, is, people get kind of stuck with, trying to create a plot that may take, 6, 8, 10 hours on a traditional standard hard drive, and are really looking for new options and new ways to plot. And Akash, with its technology, is again, a perfect fit. And what I'm going to get to show you today is creating a plot on the DWeb, so on Akash, and uploading that plot to any place you would like. So once it's created, you can then upload it to your farmer somewhere.
Very cool. Yeah, and I kind of want to dive into that a little bit more. So as was mentioned in the blog post we pushed out a couple of days ago, Akash is the world's first decentralized web platform to support plot creation on its network. Pretty cool. So I was hoping maybe, Andrew, you could tell us a little bit about what that means and why you're really excited about this partnership.
Yeah. So again, hands off to the Chia team for creating a complex workload, right? So most outfits cannot support the requirements to create a plot. The first requirement is really fast storage, and fast storage even faster than SSD. So NVMe is basically the one of the minimum requirements for plotting at any kind of reasonable speed, and that's something that you can access on the Akash network. So Akash has a variety of different hard drive types, and NVMe absolutely is part of that subset. The second point is about the transfer involved. So the transfer of the plot, once a plot is created, it's about 108 gigabytes in size. So you need a NVMe of at least 256 gigabytes, which then creates a file that is 108 gigabytes, and you then have to move that file somewhere else. And so again, in other environments, that can be a very difficult process, and most people are not prepared to move 108 gigabyte files around on their network and easily. So with that being said, again, Akash can solve many of these problems for the Chia community, not only for plotters, but also for farmers.
Very cool. Yeah, and I kind of want to stick on that kind of the plotting subject real quick. So this one's for John Michael. So Chia has been, searching for an easy way to support plotting as a service that can be inexpensive and get around the network egress limitations from top cloud providers. So in saying that, what kind of gets you excited about this partnership?
Yeah, and we kind of went into it before. So, I mean, obviously we have, quite a few people on the network because there was a large financial incentive to go. You have a financial incentive to farm, which brings people into the network, and lots of people figure this out. But when we look at, there's a lot of people, especially in emerging countries and developing worlds, where they're just going to have like 1 or 2 hard drives or just a small amount of capacity. But, the rewards have been anywhere from like $1 to $3 per terabyte per month for the storage, kind of last like 4 to 5 months. And so that may not seem like a lot to some people, but if you can pay off your hard drive in a year or 9 months, if you get it used or something like that, that's a pretty good deal. But one of the steps in that process is to go fill up these drives with these cryptographic plots. And so the plotting as a service is really interesting. We have this kind of idea that we had been throwing around in the Chia roadmap called one-click farming. And we're trying to think about like, okay, how do we get people on to the Chia network that are, don't have access to this hardware? And ideally, eventually we would want to just have it to where the Chia client kind of identifies hard drives in your system or a NAS on your home server and says, okay, you have some free space. Do you want to fill this up with plots? And then you can earn some extra revenue on the side. And if you have this, really inexpensive and decentralized plotting as a service, you can kind of do that as a background operation. And then all somebody needs is kind of like fast internet bandwidth. And even if they don't have super fast internet bandwidth, they can do it slowly over time and just fill it up. I think what we're recommending right now, especially for what we talk about, Andrew's talking about the provider requirements, and as far as anybody who has a standard gaming desktop can do Chia plotting, all they really want to add is kind of a high endurance SSD. We recommend like a used data center SSD. You can get one for $100, $200, off eBay. But there's a lot of people that don't want to go to that hassle and just say, if you're only filling up one hard drive and you're saying, okay, if you could just download them, and there's a really easy way to do that, people would prefer that because they don't want to mess with just having to go buy new hardware and kind of search around requirements for. But that really is the only unique requirement for plotting that is kind of above and beyond. If you're plotting lots of storage, is to have a kind of high endurance SSD, which is not typical on for a standard gaming guy.
Got it. Cool. And you brought up farming, so I thought this might be a good opportunity to talk about farming. So once a user has either generated plots or someone else has generated them, they will begin the process of transferring them to persistent storage for farming. So back to John Michael, and I think Andrew, you might have something to say about this too. Could you kind of take me through that process? What does that look like for someone?
Yeah. So after these plots are created, you basically just sequentially copy them over to a hard drive. And then I mentioned, like, once the plot files are on the hard drive, they kind of just sit there. So if you think of the Chia consensus, this thing called proof of space and time, if you think of like in proof of work, you're just continuing to do the work. And every 10 minutes, every time a new block is found, you have to restart all that work and start from scratch. And they have to take the new block as the next header and start hashing it with a nonce and just keep doing that and doing that and doing that. In Chia, you're doing the work up front and then writing it to disk. And so you could say, oh, that sounds like you could just cheat. You could just do a bunch more work up front and then write it to disk. And so that was some of the complex math that Bram had to invent to prevent that from happening. These are called Hellman attacks. But so once that plot file is actually on the drive, then it's really fast and efficient lookups. So the farming process is super lightweight. So once you actually have the plot files, even a Raspberry Pi 4 with a USB hard drive can do farming. And that's really the interesting thing about Chia for inclusivity for farming versus like mining. The barrier to entry for like mining Bitcoin is extremely high. Not only do you have to have like these super high powered ant miners that take thousands of watts and are insanely hard to procure and it's incredibly expensive, is that you just like you literally can't get them, but they're single purpose devices. In Chia, you just use unused hard drive space. So it's just like, okay, I have a hard drive laying around. I'm going to use it for Chia. Oh, I need to store some photos. Okay, I just delete some plot files and store my photos. So it's really the best of both worlds. You can secure the blockchain because you have this commodity resource that's kind of everywhere with storage. And then it's fungible and you can kind of switch it back and forth between Chia farming or user storage if they need to, or if somebody wants to sell the drive, they can do that too. So, but yeah, this plotting is kind of the hardest part of the entire process, is kind of initializing the drive, and so, so really, like if you have gigabit network bandwidth and you can download the plots and they're inexpensive, I think a lot of people are going to go towards that. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about some of the audience we want to reach today in the Chia community that have hardware and they're like, well, this hardware is just sitting around. Wouldn't it be interesting if we could make money? Well, now there's a DWeb platform called Akash that you can just turn idle hardware into into money.
You're taking over my job. That was actually the next point I wanted to bring up. And feel free to jump in, both Andrew and JM on this. But so about plotting hardware. So many Chia users, as you mentioned, JM, invested thousands or tens of thousands of dollars in hardware for plot generation. So once they have filled their persistent storage with plots, they no longer really need this high-end hardware. Mm-hmm. So Andrew, in saying all this, what does this partnership offer to folks that have this hardware? How can Chia plotters become Akash providers?
Yeah, so this is the great side, the great thing about being a marketplace of compute, right? We have to basically pair workloads with providers. And so we always have a door open for new providers to join the network, go through our process to configure a Kubernetes cluster to accept workloads from our network. And once they've done that, no joke here, they will start receiving payouts on those deployments that have gone to their instances within a time period of 24 hours. So people who right now have plotting hardware at home, again, exactly as you were saying, wondering what do I do next with it? One of the things you can do with it is put those compute resources on Akash. And ideally, we'd like to see, again, lots of the Chia community creating demand for that hardware with more deployments on the network. And last but not least, I'm already seeing some questions here about how much does a plot cost? Well, again, very 30,000 foot view here, 60,000 foot view. Akash is a marketplace for compute. We do not set the prices. The providers set the prices for their compute and for their instances. So in particular with plotters who have very expensive hardware, very specific storage types, some might even be running RAM drives or large RAM drives, you can absolutely increase the cost of running a deployment on your instances very easily. So today I can actually show you a little bit of that as well once we get into demo land.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're just about there. So I have seen a bunch of questions coming in the chat. Feel free to keep pushing those questions in there. We're going to get to them after we do a demo. So with that, really quickly, actually, I want to thank for those who've just joined. I'm seeing a bunch of people joining. Thanks for joining today's event. We've been speaking with Andrew Mello, head of mining at Akash, and JM, or John Michael, VP of Storage Business Development at Chia, specifically about our recent kind of partnership announcement with Chia and Akash. So now is for the fun part. Now is when we actually get to kind of see exactly how this all works. So we're going to actually do a quick demo. I'm going to hand the microphone back to Andrew, and I'll share the screen, and we can start doing it here in a minute. So feel free to take over, Andrew.
One moment.
And no problem.
Yep.
All right. And
okay, I'm ready for you.
Here we go. Take it away.
Okay, so I have the window closed there. You can see me all right?
Yep, you're good.
Perfect. So the first thing we're opening up here is basically our GitHub called Awesome Akash. Awesome Akash is where apps that can run on Akash live. So all apps that run on Akash, as we said at the beginning of the live stream, are basically Docker files running on a Kubernetes cluster. So you will use what's called an SDL file or a standard definition language file to define the parameters of the deployment, and all of the normal hooks you're used to from Kubernetes and from Docker will also work on the network. So all of these links that you're going to see today are also being shared out, I believe. So Adam, if you want to share like the GitHub link I'm on right now.
Sure thing.
Yeah. So just going through this very quickly so new users can get oriented to creating a deployment on Akash. Akash is very different than any other hosting provider where, during the normal sign-up process, you would provide your name, your address, every personally identifiable information, they could request, including your credit card and all of that to create an account with them. In the Akash world, in the world of the DWeb and Web 3.0, your account is your AKT Akash wallet address. So that is really the first step. So the first step is to get your Akash wallet and to get some AKT into that wallet so that you can then fund your deployments. And this is one of the really great features about Akash is it's super easy to get going with. Again, you don't have to wait for a hosting company to, do a verification on your ID, for example, just to get a deployment going. So again, this is super exciting for DWeb and making things much simpler. So once you've installed, and we use Kepler as our wallet, and that's a multi-coin Cosmos ecosystem wallet. And again, I'm not going to go into all the details of installing Kepler and funding the wallet and all of that, but you can see in the guide the steps are here. And then there's additional steps on how to actually buy on an exchange or how to swap from Atom, which is Cosmos, to AKT, which is really the easiest way to get AKT. So we've assumed now at this point you've got a wallet installed and you have some AKT in that wallet. And at that point, you're now ready to really start creating deployments on the network and start using Akash. So for new users and the easiest way to get started, you're going to want to use our tool called Akashlytics. And that is basically the desktop application you can use to create deployments. Windows, Mac, Linux, everybody's supported. And this will be a very easy process for you at this point. So once you get that downloaded and installed, you're basically going to be presented with this. So I will get started and log in again from the top. This is Akashlytics. So this is the application we use to create deployments on the network. Deployments can be created with our CLI and, through scripting languages and things like that for more advanced users. But, for the purposes of a demo and for, again, really reaching out to that Chia community who wants to create plots and get them on their servers as fast as possible, Akashlytics is the way to go. So once we're in Akashlytics, you can see here we have some AKT in our account. We have our wallet address below. We have a certificate that's created. And all of this data is being stored on the blockchain about our account. And so Akash really uses its blockchain for doing two things: provisioning resources and creating the deployments and pointing providers at deployments. And then additionally for doing all of the accounting and actually putting funds into escrow and paying for deployments. So from the top here, we're going to go ahead and create a deployment. The first thing that Akashlytics does is check that your wallet is configured properly, you have a certificate, and you're ready to go. So we go ahead and click continue here. This is a template page. So we have some pre-configured templates here, and we have a Chia plotting template already created. So you can go ahead and select that if you're a new user. Go ahead and do continue. And you'll be able to see here that this is what we're looking at is a standard definition language file. And again, this should be pretty familiar for anyone who's worked with Docker Kubernetes before. And just to complete the loop here to GitHub so everybody completely understands, if we take a look back at our GitHub page, we can see that the deploy.yaml file here is what we're using here in Akashlytics. And the gallery just kind of pulls these files in. So back to Akashlytics. For the purpose of the demo, I've already pre-filled all of the fields here so that we can do a plot right now. And I'm just going to copy and paste that into the fields here, and then we can take a look at it together. So at the top, we have the image being used. That's a standard Docker file that exists on Docker Hub. We can open ports to the deployment if required. And then we have environmental variables that are going to set up what we need to create a plot. And this image is created basically to be the most basic way to create a plot, where once the plot is created, it's uploaded over SSH to a remote host. And at this moment, we would recommend that remote host, you're creating a secure environment for this user and for that password to access all the time, of course. So you would first define your contract, and then you would also define your farmer key for creating the plot. You would define your remote host. So again, this does have to be publicly accessible. This is not a local host on your network. And again, I have a demo host here set up. The location on the host where you want the plot to be uploaded to, the port, the username, and the password. And additionally, we do support blade plotting. So at the current moment, Akash has certain container limits that would not support a blade plot. But in our upcoming release in the next few weeks, we will be able to support a blade plot with, yes, over 400 gigabytes of RAM. Our new container limits will support a maximum of 512 gigabytes of RAM. So very excited for that to be coming and can't wait to test the performance. Down here, we have the compute resources that we're requesting on the Akash network. You can see here there's 10 CPUs, 6 gigabytes of memory, and 256 gigabytes of storage are going to be requested. Additionally, we have a pricing called UAKT here, and this is going to tell the providers what we're willing to pay to create a plot. So for the sample of the test, basically in the demo, we can create a very high price because what this will do is just return all of the bids or as many bids as possible for this amount of compute that we're requesting from the network. So once you're happy with that, and I'm just going to copy it just in case, go ahead and name your deployment. So you can name this Chia Plotting. Create deployment. And what you're going to be presented with here is a deployment deposit. As I was saying, Akash uses AKTR token to do all the accounting, all the deployments. And the way we do that is we put 5 AKT into an escrow account that escrow account will then be used for the cost of your deployment for however long it remains open. And then if at any given time you want to close the deployment or you're not happy with the performance of the deployment, let's say you went to a provider, tried it, it didn't work out, you can go ahead and close that, and the escrow balance will be returned to you immediately. And all of the fees for doing this on our blockchain are, in the sub 1 cent level. So it's not something you have to worry about, that all of these transactions are going over the blockchain. That's actually one of our benefits. So if we click on deposit, we're going to see here the question about the fee. So you can see the fee is 0.0005 AKT. I'm going to go ahead and approve that. Additionally, when you're working with Akashlytics, you'll notice sometimes little delays. Well, our block time for Akash is 6 seconds. So as you're moving through the app, doing things like creating new deployments, accepting transaction fees, waiting for bids, since everything is being managed over the blockchain, sometimes there can be a little delay, as you can see here, the waiting for bids, because again, that's 6 second block time. And one other reason that bids can be slow, just for new users, if you know, we are connected to a public RPC node. So up here in the top left corner, if you can see my mouse still, we have the ping time and the RPC node we're connected to. If you experience really any issues, you can go into your settings and change the RPC node if for whatever reason you're not getting bids or something's not working. So here we're presented with providers on the Akash network that can support the levels of compute that we've requested now. From them. So here we have Equinix, we have a Chain Zero provider and another Equinix provider, and then US-East Akash provider. The Equinix providers here with the host Akash are what you're going to want to use first. These providers are actually audited by the Akash team. So at this moment, we can say that they are safe to use. As we grow and as we scale and as we solve some of the problems in the D-Web about trust and security, we're approaching that through two ways. Number one, doing actual signing of attributes and auditing those on providers, and additionally building more tools to let users make a better informed decision about what providers are really the safest to be using. And again, this goes back to what I initially said, which was when you're setting up that remote upload location, make sure it's in a place that, is going to be secured and is safe. So let's continue here. We see here this provider is bidding at 92 UAKT, and we'll go into what that means in a little bit. And then below, for example, again, 301. So we'll take the 92 here, and we're going to go ahead. Let's do San Jose. So SJC, accept bid and approve. Let me see if I can here. Yes, the price will absolutely reflect the supply and demand. This is one of our advantages. So what prices you're seeing right now, they change all the time. New providers are being added, and different providers will have different prices. We had a little bit of a hang up here, but it looks like it's still taking. Let's take a look. So what this page is now is the provider detail page. It looks like that provider was not working at this moment. So this is great. I can show you what to do in this case. So we'll go ahead and we'll just click on this little 3 dots here, and we can do redeploy. And we'll just push that exact same STL file over the network again. And we will send it to a different provider because we do want it to work for the demo here. So these deployments that are created, you can also enter them, with standard SSH. So you can get, a command line up and access into the container once it is deployed. So everyone knows that as well. Okay, transaction succeeded. And again, we just wait for a couple bids. And we'll be off to creating a plot here in just a few seconds.
We're getting a lot of great questions in the chat here, Andrew. So feel free to keep going with the demo. And at the end of the demo here, we'll get to as many of them as we can. So keep them coming, guys. Thanks.
And while I wait here, I can kind of side this and check the questions as I go here. So in terms of the current demand and supply levels, right now we do publish our current demand, but in terms of supply, we have less statistics around that right now. So akashlytics.com is really the home where you're going to find our network statistics about how many deployments there are, how much memory is in use on the network, how much compute, and how many leases. And an additional resource for you to check for that is going to be over at stats.akash.network. And here you can see our total deployments, AKT spent, lease owners, and our active leases. So let's toggle back here. All right, so it looks like we're up and running. Here again, at the top here for the deployment details, we have some information. We have the price we're paying, the provider we're on. And again, the provider on Akash is only represented truly by their wallet address, right? That's like their key on the network. And here we can see 10 CPUs, 6 gigabytes of RAM, 256 gigabytes of storage. And we want to go and first check our logs. That's where the action's happening. And the way this deployment and this container is built for plotting is that it will actually build from source the latest Chia version. It will use the native Chia software with the built-in plotters, and it will choose which plotter to use, based on the variables that you've put into the manifest. So as this runs here, I'll just show you a few other things here on the deployment details. You have events, so you can view any issues with pulling the Docker image down and that running, and then also the JSON data, so you can make sure you can see what is posted. Additionally, you can make changes to the manifest here. You can change everything above the profiles. So all of this is changeable once you've created a deployment. Once you change that, just go ahead and click Update Deployment, Accept, and then that will be deployed for you. And we're going to go back to logs, and I'm going to let this sit here while we continue this conversation, basically, because that was the demo of plotting. Because the next thing that's going to happen is once this finishes, it will automatically start to upload the plot to that remote host we defined in the manifest here. So that is, what this process looks like. Okay, so we can see we just started plotting here. The build finished. We have all of our configuration in there, and we are now starting to create a plot. So with that in mind, let's go back, Adam, and unpack all of that.
Yeah, that's definitely a lot. Yeah, no, thank you for that. Not only can you speak French, but you definitely know what you're talking about when it comes to Chia plotting. So very cool. Thanks for covering that.
This.
Oh, there you go.
There we go.
Perfect. Cool. So yeah, there's been a handful of questions that come up in the chat. You guys have covered a couple of them, but I thought it'd be good to maybe really lock some of these things in. So I'm going to kind of go back in time a bit. So one of the first ones that I saw here was from Auntie. I want to make sure I'm saying her name right. Auntie. So yeah, just kind of want to know how much it costs to create a plot in Akash.
Okay, a big question to unpack this one for the D-Web. Again, everyone kind of needs to retool their mind to, this is not a centralized environment, where there is just one price at all the time that is being set by someone. So with that in mind, let me take you through how this actually works pricing wise. Let me share again my screen here.
Cool.
I mentioned the golden word there, UAKT, at one point, and that's what I want to unpack for people a little bit here. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Adam? Perfect. Okay. So when we were accepting the bids and looking at that bid list, different pricing was coming in from different providers. So this 92 UAKT, what does that represent, and how do we get to 39 AKT a month for this deployment? So our pricing is basically breaking down the CPU, the memory, and the hard drive into a small index where we're actually using every block that comes out on the 6-second cycle that we were talking about. That's what we're actually using as the timing mechanism for the deployment. So like a traditional VPS provider or a bare metal provider might charge you hourly or might charge you by the minute. We charge you by the block, and our block is every 6 seconds. So when you see 92 UAKT, that means 92 UAKT, and UAKT is 1/1,000,000th of a AKT. So you would divide, 1 AKT by a million, so 6 zeros, and that would give you 1 UAKT. So that was a lot of word salad. Let me show you what it actually looks like. So I made a calculator. Let's see here. Let me see if I can reload this if it's happier. Yes. Okay. So I made a calculator to basically understand this math, right? If I know the price of AKT and I know how many UAKT, how much am I spending or how much am I expecting to spend? And we can take a look at that. So 1 UAKT right now, if we update this. Oh, we're in view only. Let me just get logged in here one moment. I think it logged me out. Just have on my phone here.
Yeah, well, while we're waiting, if you just take that Akash per month estimate, so say for instance that was I think 40 Akash and the price is like 250 or something, so you're looking at like $100 a month to run 10 cores, which is significantly less expensive than like AWS.
91.41, yeah.
Or $91, yeah. And so if this machine is producing 3 terabytes a day, now you're at like $1 per terabyte, which is about 1/5 of the cost of the current cheapest plotting as a service.
Exactly.
AWS.
Yes. So that is the whole thing here. So I wanted to show you what 1 UAKT was, because that's what people kind of need to know if they just want to do the math themselves. So 1 UAKT is basically $1 per month. So on our network, you can get a CPU core for a month for $1 at current pricing. So again, here we have 92 UAKT. We would update this 92. We're paying $3 a day, and this is where it now goes back to the user to really measure the performance of their network speed, how many plots they were actually able to receive in a day, right? And kind of poke around, because they need to check the performance to make sure it's going to work once they know the pricing.
And this is the cool thing, right? If you're not locked into the whole escrow period, if you're
right.
a user, you can just cancel at any time and get your
exactly. So watch this. So I can take this existing deployment we have and I can just close it, and that remaining 5 AKT, it barely even spent anything, if anything, on this deployment yet. We'll go right back onto my balance, and I can just make a new deployment on a new provider. And since this partnership announcement, this kind of answers, I think, one of the questions I saw earlier. We are scaling rapidly our supply of machines that can provide plots, because it is, a cost-effective thing to do, and it will make sense for plotters who have existing machines to put them on the network. It really is in their best interest, because those machines would otherwise just sit idle. And as you can see with these prices, if someone was to put a machine on the network right now that could support, the equivalent of what we did in our deployment, they would be making that $91.41 a month, right? That goes to the provider, not Akash.
Got it. Great. So I hope that answered your question, Neti. Pronouncing your name probably wrong. Apologize for that. So let me now go to the next set of questions here. And I think we kind of covered this a bit, but yeah, I want to kind of really dial it in. So this one's from, great name, Pet Farmer Crypto Journey. Love that name. We'll go PCP or PCJ for short. So can we use memdisk instead of nvme? He has 8 blades with 128 gigs of RAM each.
Yes.
So yeah, if you're setting up a plotting system, and maybe Andrew and we can do a follow-up video of how to do that best. If you have a system with 120 gigabytes of DRAM, you could use a RAM disk to basically like cache a lot of the writes, and you basically reduce the writes in the disk by about 70%. So you need about 110 gigabytes of DRAM to do that. So if you have 128 gigabytes, you're good to go. There's probably a little bit more complexity about how that Kubernetes cluster works on that, if you have to provide the whole thing or pass the disk through. But yeah, you certainly can, and that's something that people do in the Chia plotting.
Just so everyone sees here on the right, all I did here to get more bids was I lowered the CPU count a little bit. So we were requesting 10 CPUs, and I lowered that down to, I think, 4 or 6. And you can see we got a lot more bids back. And the prices really are quite different amongst providers. And I wanted to show everyone this, right? So we have everywhere from 68 UAKT down to, as low as 26. So at 26 UAKT, you're looking at 86 cents a day. And right now, right, we don't know how fast that machine plots. So what you would do is you would create a deployment on this machine, and you would go through the logs and look at it and go, oh, this machine is super fast. And you can instantly kind of figure out, oh, 26 UAKT, that's a real bargain, for these plots that I'm getting off of that machine. Or, again, you can go and this was another big important one, and I'm glad this is why I changed the CPU count. A last point we were talking about kind of a little bit earlier was the attributes, and we're now using attributes on our network to highlight providers that can support the Chia plotting workload. So the way we do that is we have an attribute for providers called Chia-plotting is true. And that's going to be an easy way for you to see, okay, this provider, they're ready to go for Chia plots. However, some of them, may not be as performant, but that can be a great indicator to choosing the provider to go with, is if they have the Chia plotting true attribute attached to them.
Cool. Very cool. Thank you for that question, PCJ, Petaform Crypto Journey. I love that name. Next up, we have another question. Actually, I try to get as many people in, but I think this is a great one. This is from I'm saying her name wrong, Anti. So if I understand correctly, Akash has computing resources currently only in partnering with data centers. Can anyone run a node, for example, at home?
That is incorrect. So we might have not covered that, but we have data centers, but we absolutely support home users. We call them retail users of compute, and you can absolutely add your own system to our network. So let me show you. This is a good place to bridge this, as John Michael was talking about this as well. We've talked about it a bunch. So how do you become a provider? And we have now, documented the process to make it really as easy as possible for anyone to get set up. So the fundamental 60,000 foot view of building a cloud provider is you need to have some machines that are available. You need those machines then configured with a Kubernetes cluster. So if you're not familiar with that, you can go through our guides here to how to create a Kubernetes cluster. And then once that Kubernetes cluster is created, you're going to run our actual Akash software in what's called a Helm chart that installs all of the necessary conditions for your Kubernetes cluster to join the Akash blockchain network of providers. So that process, we can go through. We're not going to go through all of it today, but the process that I want to highlight here on this page was really the quick start guides. There's a lot here to go through from step 1 to step 8, and it's very in depth. But I would really recommend you take a look first at the quick start guides to get a high level sense of what you're about to do, because the quick start guides might be the right place for you to start. So we have 2 quick start guides right now. One is for from soup to nuts. I have no cluster and I have some machines that I want to get set up with this. And then another guide for, I already have a Kubernetes cluster. Now I'm ready to put that on Akash. What do I do? And both of these guides are written in a way that they should have minimal input from the user required to get set up with Akash. And again, we're happy to be providing support for the Chia community as they become providers, as they want to move those machines onto our network. We're here for that.
Cool. And I do have one more question. I swear I'm going to get to other questions from Auntie. I just think this one's important. Can there be bandwidth requirements with because Chia plots are quite big, so with slow uplink, it could become unfeasible. Is that accurate, or what are your guys' thoughts on that?
Yes. So
Yeah.
go ahead. Did you want to?
I don't
have my video up, John.
if I was a provider, I'd kind of look at gigabit uplink speeds, because you never get quite true gigabit speeds. Then you're talking about 20 to 30 minutes to upload a plot if somebody's done downloading them. If the plotting time, in these like 5 or 10 core instances that are pretty inexpensive are somewhere around 40, 50 minutes, then you're kind of at like this, 500 megabits per second is kind of adequate. But I think gigabit would be safe if you're a provider. And if you're downloading plots, you have gigabit fiber, that's no problem. You can basically download a plot in 20 minutes. If you're on Comcast and you have low uplink speeds, then you're kind of stuck. You can't be a provider. just get off cable modem, please.
Great. Thanks for that. And I'm just going to throw this one in just because I think this is great. You guys deserve it. Great demo. Hard not to be romantic about decentralized web. Couldn't agree more. Thanks for that, blockchain bud. Cool. So I'm looking at time. We have about 10 minutes left. I'm trying to get through some more questions here. Let me zoom down and find a couple others. Okay, let's plug this in real quick. This is from PETA PCJ again. A little bit confused. Maybe got it wrong. 26 UAKT per day was a bid from a provider. So the provider would, I'm thinking, spend 26 UAKT for the system resources, or
No.
how does that go?
Yeah. So you're spending 26 UAKT per block to run a deployment with that specification on that provider. So that in Akash Analytics here, it's showing, right, 16 AKT per month is what that's expected to cost you. And with 5 AKT in escrow, this deployment will run for 10 days. So again, the ideal way you would do this as a plotter is you would create your manifests with all your details. You would do your deployment, ideally choose the lowest priced provider, and ideally that provider has Chia plotting equals true. And then you would absolutely want to let that run for a day or a few hours, and then come back and check your logs. All of the Chia plot performance data is here available to you, just like it is in the native software. So you can come back and see stage 1 took way too long, or stage 2 didn't even finish, right? You would know immediately what's going on with the status of the plot by checking the logs. And that's where you really want to figure out, okay, this provider is pumping out 15 plots a day at this UAKT price, and then you can figure out exactly how much you're going to spend on a plot. And this this calculator, I can share this. I want to share this in the links available. So Adam, I don't know the best way to do that or get that back to you. But
feel free if you have it public, you want to share it. Yeah, feel free to throw it in the chat, and then people can kind of jump in.
Okay.
Thanks for that.
Yep.
Cool. Cool. So this one is kind of maybe for all of us, and I'll make it more than just Akash related. So how can an individual help Akash, and I'll say Chia as well, on a day-to-day level? So I can answer some of that. So we do have a program at Akash called the Akash Insiders Program. Basically, it's kind of a leadership community within our larger, 80,000 plus greater community for folks that are interested in contributing to blog posts, writing technical content, hosting events in person and online, answering questions in our forums. And we do have some alpha stuff that we offer them as well, which I can't get into. But if you guys do want to get involved in that, you can just go to the website akash.network and click on community and learn more about the Insiders Program. Andrew just shared that link. I'll share it with you guys as well. So that's one way. We do have some things coming up. I would highly recommend. We're going to be putting out another event next week, Wednesday. We did a Discord event on Friday last week inside the Akash Discord, where we covered Akashonomics, and we kind of planted some seeds for some upcoming things that you guys could support there. So highly recommend paying attention to our Twitter and our Discord. And that's where we're going to be making an announcement on that upcoming event. So stay tuned for that. And then, Chia, I want to see maybe JM. How can folks kind of help day to day with what's going on over at Chia?
Yeah, for Chia, you can follow Chia Project on Twitter. But in Chia, we do everything from Keybase, which is this. It's kind of like a Slack that's owned by Zoom, but so it's a little interesting. But it's like kind of a crypto version of Slack. And we have our own Chia public channel in there, and that's where all the Chia community stuff happens in there. So if you want to get involved with Chia, that's where we all hang out. You can find any of us in any of the channels. The whole Chia team is basically there all day. So.
Great. Cool.
One last note, Adam. We didn't mention, that right now Akash is a great fit for plotting, and Chia. But very soon, we are going to be coming live with persistent storage, and we're really looking forward to welcoming, the farming community in the future as well, as we scale our, amount of disk space available on the network. When we have persistent storage, there may come a time and there may come a day when, storing your plots on a provider on the DWeb, it becomes very advantageous based on pricing.
I like that foreshadowing. I like how you set that up, getting people excited about this. Cool. So I think that's going to kind of wrap everything up. So I want to thank everyone for joining today's live stream. I learned a lot. I hope you guys learned a lot as well. Before we jump off quickly, Andrew and JM, how can folks kind of get in touch with you guys if they have more questions or thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. So as John Michael was saying, their community is in Keybase. You can find us in Discord and in Telegram, and we will be supporting, the Chia community there. So we already have a Chia channel in our Discord. Would love people to join that, and I'll be happy to answer any follow-up questions that didn't get answered during the session. You can find me in there all the time. And yeah, that would be the best way to get in touch with us.
Cool. And JM?
Cool. Well, yeah, I'll hop in I have Discord, so I'll go sign up for the Akash Discord and hop in the Chia channel as well. I'm on there.
You're not in there yet?
No, I didn't.
Oh man, you know what? I'm muting your video. You're out. No, I'm kidding. I'll bring him back. Cool. So yeah, definitely jump in there. I'm sure folks would like to chat with you a bit more.
Yeah, I think, and somebody asked the final question, which I think is really interesting. Obviously the Chia community, like this whole Cosmos ecosystem of proof of stake, is like very new to us. So we're going to try to make it easier to kind of bridge the Akash token to the Chia network. In Chia, we have these things called Chia asset tokens, which are kind of like the ERC20 tokens for Chia, but they're on the UTXO model for Chia. So we're going to try to figure out a nice way to get some Akash into Chia token liquidity, so we can make it really easy for people to get onboarded. So.
Very cool.
So for now, yeah, Andrew wrote a guide on at least, obtaining Atom and swapping it for AKTs. Pretty easy in the meantime. So
pretty painless. Yeah. Again, just so everyone heard that, the easiest way to get AKT to do a deployment is you would want to acquire first Atom.
Very cool.
And then swap.
Cool. Yes. Some more alpha for folks listening in. Excited about that. So again, I want to thank Andrew and JM for participating in the live stream today. For more information on Chia and Akash, you can always go to our Twitter pages to learn more. But I want to thank everyone for joining. I hope you guys learned a lot. This has been recorded, so we'll be on YouTube if you want to rewatch this, because I'm sure there was a lot of things you may have missed. A lot of great information was shared today. But again, I want to thank everyone for joining today. Thank you, Andrew and JM. And we'll see you guys at the next one. See you guys later.
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks again. We're super excited about this.
Yeah.
Cool. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.